I worked in a hospital as a transporter for a couple of years. The transport home base was in the basement of the hospital, which was where all the laundry was done and all the supplies stored. I hated working late nights after this incident. On this particular night, I was the only one in the basement when I heard whistling at the end of the hallway by the elevator. I poked my head around the corner, expecting to see my only coworker on duty that night, but there was no one there. I shrugged it off, since I'm not easily spooked. Night shifts are slow, so I ate some snacks and hung out for a while. Suddenly, I heard a loud bang. I walked into the hallway, and a bed was rolling down the hall by itself, bumping into the walls. At that point, I thought that my coworker was playing a prank on me. I decided to radio him, and he said he was upstairs in the cafeteria. I still didn't believe him and thought I would catch him in the act. As I walked past the laundry room, the machines turned on and started running. I popped my head in there, expecting to find my coworker, but the laundry room was completely empty, and as I walked in, the machines completely stopped. I froze for a moment, then ran out and headed towards the elevator when I heard whistling again. At this point, I knew I was the only worker in the basement. As I stood there waiting for the elevator, things started falling off the shelves down the hall. I saw boxes of gloves, tissues, and tube packages fall off one by one at the opposite end of the hallway. I was terrified. My entire body broke out in goosebumps. My hair stood on end, and I had this strong gut feeling I was being watched, that I was not alone. As I was getting into the elevator, I felt someone brushing my arm. I went upstairs and lost my composure when I found my coworker in the cafeteria. I totally freaked out on him. I got the heck out of there and transferred soon after that. I was transferred to the emergency C-section where a baby was lost. My coworkers and I occasionally heard a baby's cries in the hallways at night. During my 5th year as a medical student, my classmates and I were often required to work in hospitals. That night at the hospital, I worked my shift on the 6th floor. Remembering that my friend was working on the 8th floor, I walked to the elevator to go up. However, I stopped short as I realized it was already 10 p.m. When I first started working there, some senior colleagues warned me to avoid walking out of my workstation unless there was an emergency. There was even a sign here that read, "Refrain walking on the corridor or using the elevator at night." At first glance, it might seem that a sign like this would be put up to let the resting patients sleep better, but there is more to the sign than meets the eye. I hesitated for a while, but decided to walk to the elevator. My friend had a really good book that I had to borrow. Otherwise, this night shift would be very boring. After hitting the button on the elevator, I felt shivers running down my spine. As the elevator came down, I walked in, pressed the button for the 8th floor, and waited for the elevator door to close. When the door was just an inch from completely closing, it suddenly stopped and opened again. In front of me was a lady. As she walked into the elevator, I felt a gust of cold wind blowing into the place where I was standing. I didn't look at her face as I was standing behind her. From behind, I could tell that she was in her 30s. As my eyes ran down to her wrist, I was surprised as I saw a red thread with a tag on it. For those who don't know, only people who have died wear a tag with their name, year of birth, and date of death on their wrist. That's a common sight inside a morgue. That was when I started to feel real fear, but I managed to keep my mouth shut. As the elevator reached the 7th floor, the lady walked out, and I stayed inside. After reaching the 8th floor and borrowing the book from my friend, I went back to the elevator to go back down to the 6th floor. The moment I walked in, 2 nurses pushed a stretcher with a dead patient covered in a white sheet into the elevator. I wasn't scared until I saw a hand dangle from the stretcher, revealing a red thread with a name tag on the wrist. I was petrified. As I reached the 6th floor, I quickly got out of the elevator, but felt my lab coat being held back. I looked back and saw a piece of my coat was being gripped by the dead patient's hand. Before I could react, one of the nurses helped release my coat from the hand. I thanked the nurse and hurried back to my workstation. The next day, I shared my spooky encounters with my teammates. One of them didn't believe my stories and even showed off about not believing in the supernatural world. That night, that same teammate and I were working the night shift. He offered to go ghost hunting in the hospital by himself and would buy coffee for me when he got back. 30 minutes later, he came back with a pale face, and it looked like he could barely breathe. I asked if everything was okay. He said he was fine and that he needed to go see the department head. Judging from his frightened expression, I guessed he had also experienced paranormal activity. I was working the night shift at the ICU. It was 1:20 a.m., and I was writing down something in the medical record when someone approached me from behind. I turned around and saw a lady with long hair wearing a white shirt. She told me that she was having a terrible headache, so I asked her for her name and age. She told me her name and that she was 21. I jotted her information down in my medical notebook, then pointed to bed number 4 and told her to rest on it. A few minutes after that, I walked over to the bed to give her a medical checkup. As I reached bed number 4, I didn't see anyone. I wondered where she had gone. Thinking that she must have gone to the restroom, I sat down and waited for her. 30 minutes later, she still hadn't come back. So I went out to ask a security guard if he had seen her. He replied that he hadn't seen anyone coming to the ICU at all. A shiver ran up my spine. I returned to my desk and continued working on the medical record. Suddenly, a gust of wind blew open the notebook and stopped on a specific page. Out of curiosity, I decided to read it. As I scanned the page, my heart skipped a beat as I came across a line that had the lady's name and age and read, "Dead at 1:20 a.m." with the date written next to it. The cause of death was brain injury during a road accident. I looked at my calendar and realized that it had been 21 days since the time of her death. A sense of dread overwhelmed me and sent me into a panic attack. I wondered if the gust of wind was just a result of the electric fan, or if this deceased patient really had come back to the place where she took her last breath. Since I had been trained to base my judgments on science and reasoning, this kind of experience shouldn't have shaken me. However, I couldn't deny that I had been through a paranormal experience.